Hello everyone and welcome to the Constructive Criticism Network. This network is here to help you improve at Magic the Gathering at every level. From Pauper Leagues to Top 1000 Mythic, we've got you covered. If you want to hear the entire network, head on over to our sponsor at PureMTGO.com, where you can hear each and every show, each and every week, and check out their sponsor, MTGO Traders, and tell them that the CCMTG Network sent you. Now sit back, enjoy the show. From YouTube, podcasts, and more, here's this week's episode from ConstructiveCriticism.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 373rd episode of Constructed Criticism. I am your recovered from the Delta host, Mason, joined by my perfectly healthy co-host, Abe. Abe, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Glad to hear it. We're back. I had the Delta variant of COVID, and we took a week off. And so that kind of happened. We're here. We're celebrating the 8-year anniversary of CC, which was 3 days ago at the time of this recording, which is pretty exciting, a pretty storied history. Abe, I didn't tell you about this part beforehand. I want to get your live reaction. So now that you know, did you know some of our most honored guests on CC? Some of the people we've had. Do you know like the pedigree? Have this ever been talked about?
I think we've talked about it before. I do remember John Stern, and,
former co-host of the show. Yep.
Yeah, and Seth Manfield were on the show, but I don't think I could tell you every CC host or co-host.
That's fine. I just wanted to bring up that we've had some crazy guests over the course of CC, including John Finkel and Paulo Vitor Damaderosa. Yeah, if you're watching the live version, you get to see Abe's response, but I knew Abe didn't know. Yeah.
How deep do you have to go for the Finkel episode? I love
I think it's like episode 4 of CC. So here's the thing. We're going to have a little CC history lesson, Abe. The thing to remember about CC is that it came out back when there were not a lot of competitive constructed Magic podcasts around, and LR was really just starting to take off. Like LR is about, I think, 9 or 10 years old at this point. So they're like a year-ish older than us, and Spencer really wanted that for constructed and to help players and do stuff. And so for that to happen, you get to create a podcast, and there just wasn't anything like it at the time. So it was very easy to get guests. Like I believe Jerry was supposed to guest, but then got sick or something like that. So his thing fell through and just never got on schedule. But the CC has had a lot of very interesting guests, including PV, who I believe has been on 2 episodes. One of them is actually in my time of being on the show. I believe it's like episode 164. I want to say something like that. So you can go listen to PV talk about.
How come we don't ever have any guests, Mason?
Abe, because you and I are such great personalities. And listen, man, okay, who do you want? You tell me, I'll get them right now on the show. Let's figure it out. Who do you want?
Right now on the spot.
Yeah, tell me. Who do you want?
There's just too many people. I couldn't on the spot.
Yeah, but you could. Like, who would it be?
Hane. I would want Hane.
You want Hane? We can get Hane. I know Hane. We can get Hane. We'll get Hane. I'll give you 20 episodes. Give me 20 episodes, and I'll get you
20
Hane.
episodes to get Hane? That sounds totally reasonable.
Yeah, it might be
I'll
sooner.
by then.
Yeah.
Or it'll happen.
Yeah, that'll be great. Well, the listeners won't forget. I've immortalized it now. We'll figure it out. I feel like Hane wasn't ever on the show before, but maybe he was. I think that's one of the things we've had a lot of guests. But yeah, CC's been around for a long time. It's a very storied history. And it's really awesome to look forward to doing a bunch more episodes and helping out much more players. It's definitely one of those weird things where CC is a kind of a stepping stone for a lot of players and like a journey of competitive Magic for them. In a lot of ways, there weren't a lot of shows that were focused on people who were playing more at the local level and more at like the state competition level, and those sort of things honestly don't really even exist now to this day. And the thing closest to that, to us is Grindcast with Caparapple and Lee. They're kind of the show closest to ours and that sort of thing. But even them, we're really focused on the SCG Tour and stuff like that and motor results and the Mana Trader stuff now, which they're doing great work with, not to get them wrong. But it is kind of nice, and I think it speaks a lot to the message that Spencer really had when he started the show of wanting to help players and help out new players and get that stepping stone, that journey. And I hope we can continue to do that. And I hope that, even if you feel like CC, you outgrow part of CC or whatever, and you go on to bigger and better things. We get it. Brian and Jerry are great at Arena Deck List. You do your thing. That's cool. You listen to, Dominarius Judgment. We understand. But we're really glad that we're able to help and kind of build on some of those foundational stuff, because it's something that's really, really hard to do. I've been doing a lot of coaching recently, and people just don't have that access to stuff, and we're glad that we can bring that to you.
Yeah, I honestly, like, as far as all of the content I've ever made from my articles at Star City and now, co-hosting the podcast with you, a big thing that's always fueled me is I want to make content for, like, a version of me in the past when I was, like, 16 or 17 and really getting into it deep with Magic and, like, coming up and all these things that I could have learned to grow and improve and just would have loved to hear. And I have, really enjoyed the privilege of being able to do that here. And I think that, when Spencer told us that it was the 8th year anniversary, I was like genuinely like, wow, that's such a long time. Like literally me 8 years ago is kind of the person I make content for. And so, it's definitely awesome to be out here doing something that I think legitimately is great for the people it helps and is always a good place to refresh on some of the fundamentals and I it's been great doing it with you, bud.
Yeah, same. I've loved doing it with you, and I can't wait to do more, and I can't wait post all of this stuff where we get to really get on the grind and do that sort of ground floor thing, and there's kind of that resurgence of people who really want to do that sort of stuff. So yeah, thank you so much everyone that's been with us. I know we have a couple people that have been there since the beginning, and we have a lot of different people from a lot of different eras when they joined the show. I mean, you don't have a show that lasts 8 years without having kind of batches from like the Hinderfather days, and now he's off at Play Design, to when Seth and John had a big insurgence in the show, to, Allie and me, that sort of area of taking over is pretty similar to now Abe. And so we're happy to have you, and let's move on to the main show at this point, Abe. But first, we do need to talk about always improving. Is the point of the show. We've been doing it for 8 years. How do you want to start us off this week, Abe?
My always improving picks us all up where I left off about, kind of allowing myself to take a break and unlearn bad habits and relearn good habits in. Lately, I have been partaking in some chaos drafting at the LGS.
Ooh.
At whatever hours is possible. I have a friend who's like his one day off a week. He's been going through the effort of organizing at least 6 of us to get together and do, just buy some packs or bring some packs we have. I've got a lot of older sealed product that I've won over the days and been like, yeah, I don't know what I really need out of this set. I'll just save it for a Christmas when people get together or something. And so, like, we've had a lot of fun just cracking packs and drafting. But when I play these matches, because we do a little historical team draft for those unfamiliar, you open your 6 packs, or you open your 6 people open their 3 packs, you do your draft, but then you just play for all the cards in the 6 people's packs and divide them up on the winning team. So it's been nice to play more regularly for, a little something on the line, and also to care a lot about, how I'm approaching the games on a tactical level, coming up with just finding myself in new situations and coming up with ways to navigate through them, and really, getting back into the rigors of playing in paper on some sort of routine in a way that's really enjoyable. So that's been my always improving.
Yeah, my always improving moment, and it's great to hear yours, by the way, about team drafting and that sort of stuff. I wish you all played for some actual stakes, but we would never bet on the outcome of a game of Magic, of course.
I would never bet on the outcome of a game of Magic.
But if you were going to, it'd be cool to have good stakes. Anyways, yeah, for my always improving moment, it really comes down to, I've been working a lot with people in kind of a coaching role recently. It never really stopped, but I never wasn't like publicly advertising it. But I kind of did that more in my local area as things kind of fired up again. And it's been going really, really well. I have a couple people that I've been coaching. I have one I'm going to meet up on Sunday with, actually, and have a conversation with in person. That's going to be the first time doing that. We're going to get lunch. I know this person pretty well. And so that's exciting. And really working on that sort of thing and trying to improve at precisely talking to one person. Because I think I've gotten pretty good at the point of trying to talk broadly, but make you feel like I'm talking about you, thanks to the podcast, right? The podcast forces me to speak in broad terms, and sometimes I get to tell personal stories or anecdotes about somebody, and that's almost always relatable for someone else. But with these sort of things, it's stuff where, like, I need to hone in and do the exact thing with this person. So I think a great example of this was when it came actually time to do one of my first coaching sessions when starting this. the player I was talking to, he's a super nice guy. And I was kind of like, so, hey, I kind of need you to tell me what you're wanting, what you're looking to do, and what you're looking to get out of this. And I might be able to help, but I kind of need to know where you're coming from. You know, the kind of the classic, like, you go to the doctor and they ask you, what's wrong? And the person told me some stuff, but I was like, I don't feel like this is actually what needs to be worked on. I think that maybe we're also overestimating our abilities, but I didn't need to, I didn't say this out loud. It was like a theory I had running. And then we had a long conversation. I kind of felt like that stuff was true. And then he wanted to do another session the next day. So we did another one the next day. And this next one, he wanted to play and have me watch and then talk about stuff while we played. And what it basically came down to is I realized that this player was doing a really bad job at looking at cards outside of their traditional sense. And so the example of this was there was a questing beast in play and we had a red cap melee. And the questing beast was really a problem. We had a lot of lands. But we never fired the red cap melee off on the questing beast, right? Even though we had a surplus of lands. And so having that moment to really kind of talk and break that down and explain like how, we need to look at cards through multiple lenses and think about how they work in every context, et cetera, and really being able to hyper focus on that is a skill that I have not got to use a whole bunch. In that sort of setting of helping someone, and specifically like they've paid me for their time, or for my time to like help them, and I need to make sure I'm giving them max value. And I think it's been going really well, and it's a thing that's also really helpful for me because I think it's really hard to teach these things if you don't know them, and getting better at articulating them I think helps me get better at actualizing them in game because they're at worst on the forefront of my mind where I've crystallized the thought of it more. And so that's been my always improving moment from the last week.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely feel like coaching is something where I think a lot of people, especially players who've had like some amount of success or feel like they like want to start dabbling in coaching, that is something that's really understated, is the ability to go from, oh well, I have all this knowledge about a game and like what to do in all these spots and like how I could teach that information that I have, to like understanding someone else's problems and like where exactly in their process there's like breakdowns or what it is they don't get. Like that entire process is so much different, and I think it's really great that I think you are really good at stuff like that just in general, and I think it's really great that you're having a lot of success with it in coaching in your current.
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, hey, now's a great time. You're interested in coaching, reach out. You can tweet at Mason E. Clark. We can figure it out. We can make it happen. Anyways, that's going to do it for that. Supporting me is great. I love money. It's awesome. Money, great. Bigger number, better person. Y'all know that. But I really want to make your wallet bigger, and I want you to get Magic cards too. So head on over to Oasis Games and let them know that we sent you by using code Would That Be Good to get 15% off your first order, and use code CCM2G to get 4% back on every order. And you can pick up your cards there. Abe, am buying Furies from them after this podcast, so I can play Elementals this weekend.
You're
/next.
You're gonna play Elementals, not Rhinos.
I don't want to play Rhino. I don't like the Rhino deck. Well, we're going to talk about this in Modern eventually. I think the Rhino deck's kind of overhyped / like, this reminds me of Eldrazi Tron. That's where I'm at on it. And so, we'll get there when we get there with a Modern episode someday. But the Elemental deck looks more fun to play. I don't want a good deck. I want a fun deck to play.
Yeah,
and those cards
is way more fun than Shardless Agent. If you had to pick a card advantage creature for one blue-green.
Yeah. You would ban
Risen
Risen Reef, of course, too.
Oh, yeah. If it was up to Derek.
Anyways, that's an inside joke.
Speaking of things that are gone in an instant, you can drop that 10% off your order Grey Viking Games. It'll be gone in an instant if you use the affiliate link down below in the description of the YouTube video or the podcast description. You can go there for all of your Arena skins and promo code purchasing that strikes your fancy for all of the SCGs and
day-to-day play
SCG events that you play. Yeah, all of the things you do on Arena you can do in more style thanks to Grey Viking Games without having to wait on the daily deals to show up in your store every single day.
That's right. And you can always support the podcast at patreon.com/ccmtg. Abe, I don't know if the listeners have noticed, we used to do the Patreon question before the main segment. Then we moved it to the back end because we thought listeners might, prefer to have it that way, get to the meat and potatoes first. But this question we got this week from our Patreon is so important that we need to go over it now before we get into the main topic. That way every listener can hear it. And, Abe, would you mind reading the question out to our listeners? I just, you're such a better reading voice than me.
I put out the call. Let's see what we got. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. This week's question from Snapbolt Baral is, why is Mason Clark a third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck?
The power of friendship.
That's right. The power of friendship.
Yeah. It's a Yu-Gi-Oh reference. Yeah. I believe this person is referencing how there was a Twitter trend over the weekend that was like, what anime character did you want to be as a kid versus which one did you grow up to be? And I put Yugi, like the Pharaoh from Yu-Gi-Oh, and I put Joey Wheeler for what I turned into be. And there's the classic Kaiba line where he says, Joey, you're a third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck. And that's just true. It's just true.
I mean, you could do a lot worse than Joey Wheeler. Joey Wheeler, what? Top 4 Duelist Kingdom?
Joey Wheeler is a Listen, I'm just saying, if I end up being the Joey
world-class duelist.
He's a world-class duelist. He makes the finals of Battle City, too. I'm just saying, Joey Wheeler, he's like not Yu-Gi-Oh or Kaiba.
He had outside assistance for some of Battle City, right?
Yeah, but it's like a sideboard guide.
It also wasn't his choice, right?
No, he played the
No. In that duel, but a lot of the outside assistance wasn't his choice during the Battle City him versus Yugi duel, right?
Oh yeah.
Where he almost ends up at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, I mean the Merrick is what I would call e-girls, and they're ruining my life. But no. But jokes aside, Joey's a world-class duelist. I don't know if you remember the post Battle City arc where they have the weird tournament that was 11 episodes long where they had the Valkyrie monsters. But Joey top 4 is that tournament too.
Joey stay crushing.
Joey's a consistent beast. No dubs, but putting up those top 8. Joey Wheeler is the Edgar Magalhaes of the world. And with that, we're going to move on to our main topic for this week's episode. This is a new thing. We haven't really done one of these. We've done something like them with the Sunset shows of the past recently. So since Abe's introduction on the show, we kind of added this new thing where we have gone over our Pick 2 set reviews and we've talked about them and kind of lessons learned and stuff like that. And this episode's in that sort of vein, but a little more casual. And we're actually going to talk about all the sets that are leaving standard with rotation. So at the time of this recording, rotation actually happens in 30 days, which is maybe something that listeners didn't realize. It's literally less than a month. And that means we're not going to have Lovestruck Beast. We're going to lose our sweet escape cards. We're going to lose our mutate cards, which I'm sure every listener understands fully. And we're going to kind of talk about all that stuff today and go over some stories and things from that time and some lessons from that. And hopefully this can impart some stuff onto you as well. And definitely in the vein of the Resleevables, if you've been listening to that a little bit. So, Abe, I think we have to start with Eldraine, because it's the first set that kind of dropped during all this. And let's be honest, it's the most defining set and the most impactful set in years. I mean, it's crazy to think War of the Spark probably would take that title if it wasn't for Eldraine, but that's true.
Yeah. I don't even know if War of the Spark came out if Eldraine and War of the Spark's release timings were switched, I'm not sure that it would be different. But Eldraine leading off the year of 2020 for Magic and this rotation season, and also being the biggest offender, is just such a whammy combo for what is probably, I don't know, it's like one of the most universally what happened sets since Mirrodin. It's it's so bad. It's a good set, obviously very powerful, but when I was looking back and thinking about what happened during the set, I was reminded of all of the bans in Standard and all the events I played with in Paper, played with these cards, and how, it was like a Russian nesting doll of problems that kept on getting deeper and deeper as the bans rolled in and as the decks came through, and I don't know necessarily that it's worse than War of the Spark, but it definitely has felt worse than War of the Spark as we've just
had it longer.
we just trudged through it forever.
Yeah, and we'll get into this a bit more when Ikoria hits, but I think the pandemic did not help with Eldraine's taste in our mouth, let alone that. I think it's important to kind of talk about some stuff we did like about Eldraine, though, before we get any further. And I will say that I really, really liked a lot of the stuff that was gone for in Eldraine and a lot of the thematic things and that sort of nature. But besides that, the Eldraine cards are just kind of too good on rate in a lot of spots. And did you realize how many, like, I mean, I know you looked through it, but, like, do you think you could guess the number of cards that are banned from Eldraine just in, like, Standard, Modern, and Pioneer? Like, just those three? It's a lot.
It's like 8 cards or something.
I believe that's correct, because there's, like, Winota, Once Upon a Time, Oko Thief of Crowns, I'm forgetting the names of the other ones on the spot here. I'll have them in the description.
The ones that are on the ban list, because then there's Uro. And
yeah. Well, that's
we have Once Upon a Time, Fires of Invention.
Fires, thank you.
Crowns, Lucky Clover.
Escape to the Wilds.
Yeah, Escape to the Wilds.
Yes. And there's another one too. But there's just a lot. There's just like a lot of ban cards that are all from this same time period. And it's really crazy how strong the standard format is. And like looking back at this, you and I were talking about this before the show started, but I remember the first open that Eldraine was legal for standard was SCG Pittsburgh, better known as the Valley Forge Casino.
No, it's SCG Philadelphia.
Philly, I get it mixed up every time. All right, well, the home of the Valley Forge. We're in the basement of the Valley Forge, and my teammate for this is a team event. My teammate for the event is Jess Estefan, who was at the time in the MPL, and she had a pro tour the next weekend. And she was just like, I have already registered my deck because of deck registration. I'm going to play that deck in this tournament so I can get some practice. And I'm like, yeah, if you think your deck's good enough for the Pro Tour, it's good enough to play here, whatever. Do your thing. And we had banned Oko, a deck that will get banned in a very short period of time from this point. And it was not even close to the best deck in the room.
Yeah, no, it was...
It's like laughably bad.
In that event was Jeremy Bertarioni with... the like
Fire's Field of the Dead.
Fire's Field of the Dead with like Fae of Wishes and everything. With like the huge Trump plan of doing that. I spent most of that week, because this was back when I was still in college, like on the start of the next season, right, of playing SCGs, but I was still in college. I remember playing between classes. I had this like 3-hour time slot where I was just stuck at school, like playing Field of the Dead matches on my computer, like on my laptop, sitting in like the hallway of the like economics building at my school, like trying out different things. And I was like one of the first people to like put Kenrith in their deck and be like, yeah, this card is like an insane mirror breaker. And then like slowly over like the course of that week, I think like between myself, Zach Keeney, and the Lotus Box boys, the format was just all goalless. And by the time that tournament rolled around, it was like I was scrambling to find copies of Agent of Treachery. That was like the big hard card to find other than Field of the Dead. I had to like borrow Kenriths, which were only in like, it was impossible to find non-foil versions because they were only in foil. It was a huge mess. This set, like, and that tournament especially, were just like brutal to find cards for. I think myself, Jonathan Skennick, and AJ Kerrigan, made a pretty deep run. I think we like lost back-to-back potential win-and-ins, and then ultimately beat Anderson.
I was gonna say your table, you were set next to us in the last round, because I remember. Yeah, you're
like started off that day with a win. I remember every round I sat down, I was so ready for the field mirrors, because I'm not really bothered by that stuff as much.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm playing in paper, it's just like whatever. It's a nightmare standard format deck where board states are going to get tough, and like you need to like figure out how to trump people and play quickly. Like, but whatever. That's just Magic. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember that being like, I'd sit down, and if my opponent was like, "Oh, ready to do this again," as we like started on our Boreal Grazers and Field of the Deads, I was like, "Yeah, are you ready?" And they're like, no, it's gonna be so miserable. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, what are you gonna do about it? Let's just jam. Come on, like, let's go. Chop chop. And so that was awesome. I think I only lost mirrors to I only lost a mirror to Rossum. because he like had more Okos in his deck, and that was when I was like, man, Oko's a pretty decent card and neutralizes Hybrid Graces. Boy, were we wrong about just how good that card was. And I lost like Matt Nass's team was there, and he was playing blue-green food. Played some interesting games, but yeah, that format was just. It started off with like Field of the Dead being the problem, and slowly as we removed Field of the Dead from the format, then it was like, oh, there's bigger problems. Like, oh,
Yeah.
Oko's the problem now, and then like.
Oh, Fires is the problem.
Yeah. Oh, Fires is the problem. Oh, Cat Oven's the problem. Oh, and like really.
Oh, Cat and Oven
are.
Yeah, that's right. That's the other ban card. Yeah.
The rest of the year of Magic really just turned into like what Eldraine card is the biggest problem, and that was something I really didn't like. It's really like I liked a lot of the simpler designs. I did like the Muldriftery creatures, the like adventure spells. I think some were a little pushed. But like Murderous Rider is one of the cards I think really has done a. It was like definitely people were like, oh wow, this is like absolutely one of the best ones. It's like Hero's Downfall, staple card, but like with a little bit of like life loss on it, and you also draw this 2/3. That's insane. It's just like going to be unreal, and it came out really balanced.
Which says a lot about a lot of things, but also also our ability as a community to judge cards. Yeah, I think the adventure cards are really cool. It's just they get a bad rap for Brazen Bar, Lovestruck Beast, Bone Crusher Giant. Those three are just like so above rate. And to the point like where Brazen Bar is seeing modern and legacy play, and it's like probably should be seeing more of it. And it's like this is like pretty crazy.
Cheap spells are just so good, and when you can play cheap like instant sorcery effects and not affect your creature count and have like, you know, another card attached, when all those things say draw a card, it doesn't really matter how like what the deck building costs are. Like you just play Lovestruck Beast like single-handedly, being a 3-mana 5/5 defensively lights out like entire aggressive strategies, making the 1/1s a huge roadblock. Who cares if it attacks really? You know, the Great Henge, also an insanely powerful card from that set that is boosted by Lovestruck Beast. There was a lot of things that like it felt like it was pushed. I remember by the time that Invitational comes around, where I think everyone's playing Urza, and like I remember missing day 2, but the only thing I had to sweat left was if Allie miraculously like 8-0'd or 7-1 day 2 of the Invitational to jump me on points because Zach Heaney failed to day 2 because he played something awful like Storm or something in Modern. I think I like watched him every round since I got eliminated, and he just couldn't win a match. But like I walked over and he was playing against Harlan, and like I just see the game playing out, and Harlan just like casts a whir, and Zach like looks up at me and like looks at the board, and we just both start laughing because we both understand he just like literally can't win any matchup he plays on the day, and that is really good for me, and he cares a lot less than me at this point about like that stuff. But I'm like, oh yeah, like you missing day 2 is like puts me at a lock almost. But then like on day 2 I went to Cube Draft instead of playing any other event because it was the only place I couldn't play against an Eldraine card. There would be no Okos, no Lovestruck Beasts, no Bone Crusher Giants, none of it. No adventure cards, no Eldraine cards. I can play against new things. Pioneer was covered with the stuff. It was so awful.
Yeah, it was a wild time. Yeah, the impact was lasting, and you know, like you mentioned, we talked a lot about the ban cards and the adventure creatures some, but things like Great Henge, Embercleave, these sort of things have impacted the standard format for their entire time. And they've done it in really real ways. And things like Korvold too, I mean, has carried an archetype along with Trail of Crumbs to this day. You know?
Yeah,
it's
Korvold's still like one of the best cards in Historic and Pioneer. It's like the deck still shows up. It's so good in every format.
Yeah, I top 8'd a standard classic during this time of Eldraine, and I played the Jund Food deck, and I was talking to our friend Manda recently, and that got brought up or whatever, and she's like, oh, what was that deck like? And I was like, you know the Historic deck? I didn't have Thoughtseize, but my deck was just that deck, actually. It's just the Historic deck, with better sideboard cards for the metagame. And it was like, when I thought of it like that, it's like, wow, there have been some messed up standard decks in this little like period of time during all this. So yeah, it's a really crazy sort of thing to think about and look on there. I think we could talk about Eldraine honestly for the whole episode if we space out a bit more, but we should really move on to the other stuff because the other stuff will bring up Eldraine again. Worth mentioning before we move on, though, Paulo Vitor Damarosa did win the Pro Tour during this time playing Blue-Green Food, playing against Strosky. I'm sorry, Strosky won, didn't it?
Beat PV.
Strosky beat PV. I misspoke there. My bad.
Five tight games.
Yeah, 5 tight games of Blue-Green Food. A classic matchup. They were this. That was one of the last moments I feel, speaking about like memories and things like that, where it's like, wow, the pressure is really on. Like Strosky wins this, he's MPL or whatever, or right, he's somewhere in that spot or not. And these games are so tight, they're so close. This is like the last great, storyline coverage in my head, at least. And so that's probably not true, but that's like the one that stands out to me. I have
There's
some.
Also, there was another Mythic Championship than that one with Eldraine out.
Yeah, there were
and
two, right?
Before the Field of the Dead banning, and I believe what actually won was Gruul Aggro, which is just I looked at him and was like, "There's no way it actually happened." But yeah, Gruul Aggro beat Javier Dominguez on Gruul Aggro beat John Emmanuel Debraz on the Field deck.
Mm-hmm.
And just thinking about like, oh yeah, Questing Beast was that good. It's like
Questing Beast Embercleave was like very, very hard to beat for a while.
And there was also that Jeskai Fires like cavalry deck.
Yeah, that really takes over in Ikoria, but it only takes over because these other cards got banned along the way. Like it's really impressive. That deck was a deck also during this format. It's crazy to think that like at the Pro Tour we're talking about where Gruul Aggro won, there's Bant Oko, Blue-Green Oko, Field of the Dead Fires were mentioned. Like all the decks that would end up getting, I'm sure someone had Jund Food as actually I know Crokies had Jund Food. He was playing Black-Green Food, I think, at that event. So there's a bunch of decks that got banned all at the same tournament. Shout out to Crokies, the best Magic player of all time, clearly. He's the one we should be trying to get on the show. Anyways. Yeah, I mean, it is truly an incredible tournament to think about, and just shows how insane Field of the Dead is, which we're not even really talking about because it already like rotated at the time this coming out. But Field of the Dead was like one of the most messed up cards in Magic's history. Until we get to Ikoria, and we'll talk about that soon. Theros. So Theros is actually holds like a special place in my heart too, because Theros is right actually like that. The classic I mentioned is like right before Theros. It's the end of the standard format with Eldraine, as like the only set or whatever. And Theros, I mean, this set really kind of blew people away, I think, in power. I think when it was coming out, it kind of did this thing that is a little bit of a theme across sets even now with AFR, where like, can these cards compete with Eldraine? And the answer is typically they can't, but there are a few standouts that do end up surprising people. I think this set really did that with cards like Elspeth Conquers Death being one of them. I think Woe Strider was a card that people pinged pretty early as being good, but it actually has like been really, really great throughout its whole entire time in Standard. Been a huge player. Cling to Dust has done a lot of really, really good work. Even in older formats like Legacy a little bit, we saw some Cling in the earlier parts of the year. And Theros was a really impressive set. But it is overshadowed by the Uro Menace, which I remember, for like a little story time, I remember driving back from an SCG. And it was like one of the first times I've ever actually driven like by myself or whatever. And it would have been SCG, I think Cincinnati or something. And I'm like driving, I get to a rest stop or whatever, and I'm like stretching my leg. I'm taking like 15 minutes to get out of the car, And I look at my phone, and I see this Uro card get printed. And I'm like, dang, this card's pretty good, And like I look through Twitter and stuff like that, and people are like really hyped for Uro. And I'm like, this card's pretty good. I'm like thinking about it in the car. I'm like, yeah, that card's gonna be really strong. It's probably really good with Emery. Like you Emery, like kind of find your Uro, you do some stuff. That's kind of cool. Like we're gonna have to look out for more cards that are good with Uro. It turns out Magic cards are good with Uro, and it is like one of the most like single-handed. Hey, if you just have Uro, you can win the game cards in all of Magic's history. It really does take over the game all by itself.
Yeah, I remember this being the transition from like, okay, Oko, too good. We messed up. Oko's out of here. And then they just printed Uro. And like, Uro was just another one blue-green card that just made the game revolve around itself, and it was so like my reaction. I remember being like, "This card is going to dominate. This card is going to suck so much." And like by the time people started casting it and playing with it a little bit, it there was no like there was like this hope of like, oh, maybe we're all wrong, maybe it's all not that bad, and then
it was
Uro pretty good.
Yeah, Uro is really good. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it really did. Like the first SCG that being released was another team tournament. This seems to be a common thread. And the topic of that, we had like Reclamation, which by the way is around during all this time. We were talking about all these decks, and there's just Reclamation is legal during this format during this time. What a crazy era when you really think about it. And that was like the deck that dominated. We saw like Dylan Hand top 8 with my Jund deck, and then we saw Reclamation do really well, and we saw Blue White Control ultimately win the tournament, I believe, in the hands of BCW.
That was actually the same. That was a tournament in the same venue. That was in Philadelphia, I believe. Or no. I'm thinking of the.
This was Virginia. It was like Richmond.
Yeah, there's the Richmond tournament. I remember I played a bunch of Pioneer for that one. I was helping people prepare for the first and only of the in-person regional players tours.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I remember I had a friend who played. They were playing like some Nissa like blue-green deck with like Gust and everything.
Yeah.
And then that was the weekend that like Inverter came out, but also Uro was like until I think it was what Joel Larson played Uro and Pioneer.
Yeah.
Like that was like the first moment where people were like, oh, like
it goes back.
Be exploring like oh no, like we should really be getting on this because it's that good. Like we should be doing it in all the formats. And then I remember that card like Inverter overshined it, especially in Pioneer, but that being like the moment. And then by the time that Philadelphia rolled around again in the Valley Forge Casino, which is what I was remembering, because I spent by then semesters would roll over. I no longer had this 3-hour downtime. My schedule was a lot more compact, so I was playing Teamer Reclamation leagues during my environmental ethics class. And whenever the professor would walk around the room to come, I sat in the back of the class on my laptop. It was like mostly an online like interfacing class for interaction for whatever reason. And so I'd just be playing Moto. And whenever he'd assign us a little writing thing, I would like have to lose 5 minutes on my Moto clock and be like fiercely double queued in class. But that was like, yeah, the only decks in the format were Food, Rec, and Blue Eye Control for a little bit there.
Yeah, this is so I got confused there earlier. PV won Worlds with this deck. He won Worlds with Blue Eye Control. Yes, yeah, and he beat Fires with Vinci, which is a banned deck we'll get to here in a minute, even more so. But yeah, I remember this because I was gonna play PV's Blue Eye Control deck at I had like a local PTQ. It was gonna be like LGS. You get to go play the regionals player tour or whatever the thing's called at the time. I don't remember the name of it. Basically, it's just a PTQ. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to play PV's deck strong or whatever. You know, like IRL tournaments are always a couple weeks behind. I don't want to play anything silly or stupid. And then I remember after an SCG, I want to say it's one of the last ones. Because we had lockdown almost pretty soon after I got qualified with the Pro Tour. So it would have been Indianapolis with Pioneer.
Yeah.
I'm like eating food at Permane Brothers. And I'm like scrolling Twitter. And I follow a lot of Japanese Magic Twitter accounts. Or follow a couple of them, I should say. And I saw one from a local tournament where this guy just had like 4-0 in his like picture, and he had like a bunch of kanji I couldn't read. But more importantly, he had his decklist picture. And in his decklist picture, he had Blue Eye Control, but with Uro, Hydrocrisis, Tameo, which would later become the Bant deck that everyone... This deck hadn't been discovered at this point. It's like a month in. Yeah, the best deck of the format by a lot. And I was like, this deck looks really good. And I like slid it and like crossed the table. And I was like, I might play that next weekend. You know? And it's like... maybe like, you know, I'll test it when I get home or whatever. I don't want to like throw away a good thing or whatever. You know, I really want to queue for the Pro Tour. This seems like a really great chance to do it. I'm not gonna have a lot of chances playing all the SCG tours. And I got home and I played it on Arena, and I was like, holy like my deck's unbeatable. Like I literally can't lose I just like I'm like playing terribly. I'm like sideboarding like an idiot. I like don't know what's going on in the matchups. I don't understand them from this side yet, and I just cannot lose. And I like haven't escaped an Uro yet. And it's like I've been playing 3-mana Growth Spiral or whatever, and I'm just bodying people. and I'm like, okay, I have to get the cards for this. And then I ended up qualifying for the Pro Tour with this deck in that format. And so, Uro, for all it's worth, it did get me to the Pro Tour. I think I escaped it one time across the whole day, but it was against a Fires player, and
Was all you need?
it was enough to block the Cavalier. I went to like 2 and then escaped it again and was like, let's start pounding. And that card's insane. So yeah, Theros block is like, once again, this like kind of crazy thing, and I really liked Theros. I think it did a lot of really cool things. Like, I think ECD is a really awesome type of card where like it really punishes like these bigger mana stuff, and it's like this huge haymaker, but it didn't become obnoxious, and we saw it forever. It did kind of leave once Yorion left. Like, the format kind of changed a bunch, and the power level thing shifted with bans, and it was just a really fun format to play and be a part of and to kind of experience. I don't know how you feel about Theros overall.
I don't know that I have the same recollection. I did like. I liked playing. Okay, yeah. So I'd reevaluated my process and was really starting to see results in that, and some of the changes I was making. At my team event Sundays, or like Saturdays, were not that good, but my Sundays, I had like top 4 to the Pioneer Classic in Richmond, and like felt really good about the way I'd played all day, and like, thanks to playing Teamer in class, I ended up punting away the game, but like I felt like I'd played one of the tougher tournaments I played. Playing that Flash deck was really difficult. Especially against blue-white when there's so many things going on. Like, I played that tournament really well and was just, like, overall rebuilding a good foundation for myself and, like, feeling a lot more confident than I had previously. And at the same time, I think it was, like, probably some of the more, like, miserable that Magic has been while I've played it. And once the lockdown started for the pandemic, I basically checked out at this point. And I liked original Theros. Is actually the set I probably have played the most matches of, but this Theros Beyond Death, like, I felt like it missed a lot of marks for me personally, where the cards weren't really exciting, or like, they were all solid, I guess, but really the ones that had any impact were the Omens, which were good role players.
Dryad and Modern.
Conquer's Death. Wait, what card in Modern?
Dryad of the Elysian Grove. It made Amulet easy.
Yeah, doesn't matter to me. So.
Yeah, see, I actually hate that it did that. I hate that Amulet Titan is so much. It's still very hard, and Magic's a very hard game or whatever. But Amulet Titan, you had to scrap for it. We had trophy mages. We had cool stuff. Yeah, and it was just like,
your games.
Oh man, I hate Dryad.
Yeah, so around this point, I really was just like kind of checking out. I guess Pioneer was the form I was paying the most attention to because it had the most new stuff going on. But Theros didn't really do anything to excite me, and didn't really give me a play experience that was very fun. Most of the cards I remember really fondly were still the ones that were like, even like the spiky, like, oh, I'm winning tournaments, or like, oh yeah, I remember like playing these Pioneer decks like mono black, or like I remember playing these things. And Uro was actually probably more miserable for me than Oko, because when I was playing with Oko, at least I felt like things were broken, or like I was doing something powerful, or I would just know the game was like kind of defined by this card. But with Uro, just every game that it was cast felt like such a slog that Uro is just too large a stain on Theros for me.
Sure.
I did like the limited GP. I had a seal pool where I had like no removal, but 2 Dream Trawlers.
I hated how much of a slog the games were. Luckily, my double Dream Trawler deck just beat the ever-loving crap out of my opponents.
I remember playing against
oh god.
I played against former player of the year, beat Seth Manfield in the playoff.
Beat Seth Man? No one beat Seth Manfield except for me at both events. What's up, Seth?
No, who was the one who they had the like best of 1 playoff?
Oh, I know you're talking about Luis Salvato.
Yeah, I played against Luis Salvato in that Grand Prix, and like I just remember him shaking his head when I just cast the second Dream Trawler. And that was like an awesome moment for me. I don't know, opening Dream Trawlers was great. Everything else about that set, I could have done without.
Sure. I will say that, qualifying for the Pro Tour and also having a deck before it like broke out probably paints my perspective of the format a little different than most. I will admit that. Anyways, Ikoria. So we've hit the part of the podcast where it's like we're talking
Now
about
we're in the
COVID?
pandy.
Yeah.
Full in pandy.
It's like low-key maybe a trigger warning. I'm not sure. Trying to figure out how to balance that, but we're talking about COVID a bit here. But yeah, I mean, Ikoria started previewing, and I remember reading Ikoria previews on my phone while I'm like, because I have at the time, they're a 9 and 10-year-old Brady brothers. And so they're out of school, and someone has to watch them while my parents, like, did Zoom patient appointments. And I couldn't see patients because when I see them, I need to actually be there physically to hook them up to a machine. And so I'm watching these kids, and I'm like, they're doing their homework or whatever, and I'm like scrolling Twitter reading Ikoria previews, and like that's like the start of Ikoria. Like I very clearly remember seeing like the bat that mutates in like my stepmom's. Yeah, Dur's back. That's right. It's a Hero's Downfall bat, and I remember seeing that one in my stepmom's art studio, and you know that's like my memories with like, but like. It's so weird because I don't remember anything about Ikoria until it comes out from that point. Like I just know thanks to like how COVID worked, where it was just like I was stuck inside a whole bunch and they had all these previews, and the companion hype was like it was like the end of the world. And we have to start there, I think.
Yeah. So I guess a little last piece of perspective. We're already like halfway through at this point these sets, but a little perspective on my trajectory here, which is that like Eldraine. I'm when Eldraine's previewing, I'm still writing for Star City. Mm-hmm. Shortly after Eldraine, I am no longer writing for Star City as they decide they're changing their model, and I'm not in it. So it's a pretty big blow. And then also like, so the only thing tying me down to like caring a lot about competitive Magic and like processing that is like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on being the best player I can be and do those things. It's kind of where I wanted to be anyway. Focus on school and this. So I really had only those two things going on, and then both those things were taken away from me, and I kind of just like checked out. It was like I couldn't tell you a single card I remember seeing previewed in Ikoria. I do remember being convinced by watching a friend play some Ikoria like standard, mm-hmm. that like from for the Lotus Box tournaments, which were starting up in this time, as a way that the SCGs were, or a way to like replace the feeling that the SCGs were giving, was that Lotus Box, in order to make sure that people stayed engaged with their content for, you know, hopefully just the short time that we were going to be dealing with this, which did not turn out to be a short time.
So we still deal with it.
Yeah. Those events started up, and I remember the standard one being the first one in the series, and I'd meant to play a couple of them, but they were really doing the series, and like just watching my friend play with Lurrus and being like, this card is legal, like you can do that. I think I must have posted like an 80% win rate across all of the matches I played on Moto or on Arena or anywhere with the companion mechanic as it was. It was just so hopelessly broken. And like, still people talk about, I saw not yesterday, Dom Harvey talking about how like maybe we should just ban Lurrus in Modern because it's just too good. And,
yeah.
Like the companion mechanic, despite being nerfed, despite all these things, it really made Magic like me, who was only able to enjoy and only really felt like enjoying Magic in the spikiest way possible, trying to like when I was giving myself the time to play, just play out of my mind and play to win and play these like, you know, complex games, or like, you know, maximize my resources and stuff and like really go at it, remembers it kind of fondly. But my only memories this set are watching my friends draft cycling for 7 wins and force it in the quick draft queues to get all the way to like high mythic and like get their arena counts to infinite, which I should have done, but I didn't care enough about Magic at the time to do it. And playing the Lotus Box events. So that was like it. And I loved it. I was having a blast. I was like, this is so unhealthy, but unlike all of the other unhealthy things I've dealt with in Magic for the last 18 months, between all of the Planeswalkers and Uro and Oko, this one is fun for me to do because it's hyper spiky and not game dominating in that kind of way where it's only around this one card. It's that I'm just playing something super powerful that's not going to get interacted with well, and like I'm going to interact well with my opponent, which was so sick.
Yeah, I mean, companions, you know, they changed the game. They changed everything. Like, I remember, like, do you remember how Garuda Day 1 was like, that's what people thought was like, they're like, wow, we're going to have to ban Garuda. You know? Like, that's
Put how much power into play for 6 mana? Not cool.
Yeah, and like legacy decks, like I mean, it had to get changed in legacy and stuff, but like you would just like Lion's Eye Diamond out these Gyrudas, you know, and there's just this crazy like shift in tone. And I remember I was streaming a bunch at this point, like at the start of the pandemic, because I had like nothing else to do, and it was like I was streaming Lurrus Humans, and I was like really big on. And I still think Lurrus Humans was better than Giganta Humans at the time because Lurrus is a better card. But like you just would flood the board with humans and play your deck, and you just had a way to like rebuy your Thalia's Lieutenants now and stuff like that, and it just became miserable for your opponent. And it's funny because I remember all of this, and I remember distinctly getting into the Valorant beta, and then Valorant eating up a whole bunch of my time, like just mono Valorant until we're like about a half a month, or probably a month out from the Pro Tour. And then my Pro Tour was this format online. And so it was a thing where it's like I was playing to figure out that, and it's like, okay, do I want to play Reclamation? Do I want to play Bant? And I was testing with Estefan and Ash Lizzle. Those were not together, but I was like in 2 different groups with them. And we're trying to figure stuff out. And I remember having a lot of, and I still kind of do, to be honest, just blunt with you, I have a lot of resentment towards that being my Pro Tour. I spent a lot of time getting good at Magic. And, you know, I'm not the best player in the world, but I know I could qualify for more Pro Tours, but I'm not going to get a chance because it's done. And then, like, the kind of half Pro Tour that they did, I qualified. I did the thing. I played by the rules. And then, like, I got by the pandemic. And so right now, fun fact, listeners, you're in the same place I played the Pro Tour. If you're watching the YouTube video, I sat right here and played it. This is what I did. I was here. And so, you know, and like all I got from my Pro Tour is that arena sleeve. And I'll tell you what, I only use that stupid Past Exile sleeve, and it's the only one I'll ever use because that's the thing I got. But, you know, that was my Pro Tour. And for my Pro Tour, I remember a lot of it figuring out, like, am I just going to play Team-A-Rec or am I going to play Bant? And I was pretty locked in on playing Team Reclamation despite Estefan really thinking we should play Bant. And then there was like the 2 different Pro Tour weekends that had 2 different Pro Tours going at the same time. Yeah. And it was like very much like this is the thing I'm in. I'm going to play. I'm going to compete in it. And, you know, for what it's worth, like at the time, Allie's on the podcast and Allie top 8'd the Pro Tour week. Shoot, Allie played the week before mine. Maybe it was 2 weeks. I can't remember exactly, but the one before mine for sure. And Allie top 8'd, and you know I was gonna play Team-A-Rec, but I had like Narset Reversal as like the thing that I figured out, and that turned out to actually be good, which was another very validating moment. But it was like I played this Pro Tour, and my day one, I remember my Pro Tour going really well. Like I get, you know, I'm excited to play Magic. I enjoy playing Magic. It's just so funny. Speaking of Twitter trends, yesterday there was a trend that was like going around all of Twitter. It's like post a picture of yourself not smiling, and it hit Magic Twitter, and everyone's picture basically, Abe, right, was them playing Magic, and I was like, I don't have that picture. Like, like I'm just like always smiling or grinning or something when I play, but I get anxious still, you know. And I remember playing the Pro Tour, and like I won round 1, I won round 2, I won round 3. I actually went back and found the thread recently on Twitter. And it was like things are going really well. I lose to Mono Black, I think, in round 5. I play against Nassif in round 7, and I lose to him in a really close game. I go back and I watch the VOD. And it was very interesting to me because it's like, all right, not only do I get to rewatch my game and learn from it, but I also get to see if, like, did Nassif fall for my bluffs, or did he just figure he could play around stuff? You know, like, was it working? Yeah. Was it not? And it was really great to see, like, Nassif's like, wow, this person's like, well, he called me a psychopath because I played no ops. That was the first thing he said. When you go back, if you watch, I don't think the VOD's anywhere, but if you could, the first thing Steve said is, wow, no ops, crazy. and I was like, oh, that's a little crazy, admittedly. And the second was like, he's like, this guy has to have a Shark Typhoon. He's playing like, there's just no way he doesn't. And we just like had a lot of land go situation where I very clearly remember my hand being like, almost all lands, and it was like I didn't have a Shark Typhoon, but I really needed Nassif to think I had one, so he didn't play one and start beating the crap out of me with it. And I believe it involved me like even not playing a Teferi so that he wouldn't cycle his Shark Typhoon. It was like a really crazy match. I remember it going really well, and day 2, you know, didn't go great, whatever, but I ended up X5 at my first Pro Tour, and I was like really happy about that. But I still have like this weird, I mean, I think it's like a chip, honestly, where it's like I kind of got shafted. You know, I did everything right, yeah. And I got the online Pro Tour. Everyone tells me how they went to Montreal or whatever, and yeah, you know, I get to relive it every day.
I just talk about what Madrid, Kyoto, and you're talking about your own room. That's it's not the experience that a lot of people, when they like, you know, think about the dream or about the Pro Tour, it's not the thing that they feel like they've sold themselves on. And I definitely, you know, I definitely feel like there's been a big association for me personally with the new state of things and why I haven't been playing, like, why I didn't play many super PTQs, or why I don't play like as many Moto PTQs as I necessarily would have if I knew all the PTs qualified for real PTs right now. It's just like, it's not the same thing, and it's not, especially being in the set of players who like had fought for so long for this thing to be like the first of, you know, however many. We didn't even know what OP is going to look like in a year. Like however many more Pro Tours or Pro Tour equivalents or large scale events look like that is definitely something I can see being extremely, like, it's super valid for you to be frustrated about that and like to have that chip on your shoulder. But, you know, I'm glad that you had an experience that was still positive for you, and one that you like, you know, like your result was one that you can remember fondly, and like, you know, that you were able to make the most of what was, you know, and is otherwise a pretty terrible situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I you know, like when I think back on Arcoria, when we're talking about this, I don't have a lot of fond memories. I you know, I just didn't play a lot. It's like at the start of the pandemic. I think the formats were like fine or whatever, but it was like Fire's Yorion was so good. Oh, I day 2'd and like I lost playing for $1,000 during this point too. Like I played like the stupid Bant deck. Like I played like the arena thingy, and I like got to day 2 whatever and just lost like 2 heartbreakers playing for $1,000. I forgot about that. That's
Kruger Fires deck.
Yeah. Well, the Kruger. I think this one was Yorion Fires though. It was like Agent of Treachery, Fires.
Oh, Jeskai Luca.
Jeskai. Sorry, yeah, I said the wrong name. Sorry, Jeskai Luca.
Deck that got banned. This was a time where I was just not, after the Lotus Box events ended, which was with the companion change just about. I don't think I played a Magic tournament or even a match of Magic for something like 2 or 3 months. It felt like I was really out of it. After, I guess that's after the core set. So we can jump ahead. Is there anything else you want to say about Ikoria as like a set, or like?
Not really. I just, this whole era is just defined by the word ban. You know, it's just,
yeah, it really is.
We've had multiple different deck banned in every format we've talked about so far.
The only thing, one thing that happened in these chaos drafts I talked about and Always Improving. This whole episode has so much lore.
Yeah.
I played with Dylan Jealous the other day at one of these chaos drafts. People don't know Dylan Jealous. You know, one of the better drafters out there when he's like really practiced with the format. I believe he has 2 GP top 8s, both in limited. 1 finals appearance, 1 top 4 appearance. Really, really good limited player. The only thing he really does in Magic is play limited. He took an extended break over the course of the lockdown pandemic. It really didn't feel the same to him. He wasn't getting what he wanted out of it. So he stopped. He was doing one of his chaos drafts. He cast a mutate spell. I had to explain to him 7 times how mutate worked, and I'd never even thought about it because it's so seamless on like Magic Arena and Magic Online, how it like works and whatever. And like you play with it once or twice and you really get it. But it was just a lost cause, and I'd never appreciated the complexity in Ikoria until then. Because I always remembered it as the like, oh, you just draft cycling set, and the oh yeah, companions are broken set. So
that's fair. Yeah, mutate is berserk when you like read it. It's just an enchantment.
It does mark the end of, at least for me, it marks the end of the like, what are we doing? Like, this is so broken era of like design.
That's true.
I think this is like the end of Fire to me. Like when everyone was like freaking out about like Eldraine stuff, this is like the last set where I really felt like things were just being too pushed, and we were going down the wrong path, and the ship needed to be righted. And I think this core set and beyond really was the righting of the ship. So that's what I liked about Ikoria, was that it was the last of these things. That and my hyper spiky obsession with like winning a billion matches and like winning a bunch of money in the Lotus Box events. Those are like the only thing I had good about it.
It's so funny to me that you say it's the end of Fire, because you know they still follow Fire, right? It's just they understand it better now.
Yeah, but I think that when you talk about the fire design era, it kind of feels like
we're still in it though. That's what I'm saying is they just missed.
Right, they missed, but they missed so many times in a row,
But
and now we get feedback. You know, it's like
That's
this is
true.
a new fire. I just consider it post-fire because I really do think that like.
Did you know I
when
have fire
think about,
sleeves?
especially this year of Magic, I think this year of Magic is most defined by people being like, "What the like? Come on, what are we doing? This is insane. This is just way too much, and like the power level is way too pushed, and this is not actually fun. We wanted more powerful cards, but not like this. This is way too much." And I guess like Omnath is probably the last design I consider. Like,
Yeah.
this-
Omnath was over the line for sure. Also, Lurrus is like with the original companion rule probably the best Magic card ever printed, if not
yeah,
one
it's,
of the.
it's one of the only cards banned in Vintage.
Yeah,
It's like-
it's really good. It's underappreciated how good Lurrus I think is. Like the original, like current Lurrus, quite strong. Original Lurrus is like very, very, very good. Like we're talking about my deck that's all humans, and just creatures that attack was playing Lurrus, and I promise you it was the best build of humans at the time. There's just no doubt in my mind. Anyways, I want to talk about a fun aside of the fire story. So recently, I went out to Seattle to visit my friend Emma. It was a great time. Emma works at Play Design, and they had a cookout, and I went there, and it was just a little fun get together, whatever. I was just happened to be in town on the weekend, and Melissa had brought sleeves for everyone because they were going to do a draft, and she's like, "Oh, I had these extra sleeves," and we did I think 3 drafts that day, right? So there was like a bunch of them. And then I'm in the last one, which is an AFR draft. And so this is like the release weekend for Forgotten Realms as well. And I looked down at my sleeves that I've been playing with all day, and it's FIRE with a ... Like, you know what I mean? It's like fire. And I looked down at the sleeve, and I'm like, it's fire design. And they, like, I'm like actually playing against Melissa at the time. And Melissa goes, yeah. And I'm like, I get it now. I didn't understand why there was fire with these smokes on the sleeve before. And she goes, yeah, it's fire design. And I was like, yeah, that's dope. Kill spell. And so that's my latest memory of fire design. I was just looking down like, oh, I get it. I thought these were just like lame Guy Fieri sleeves or whatever this whole time.
You thought you were taking them to flavor town?
I just thought like little flames. I thought they were just stupid I literally thought they were like old Grand Prix sleeves that Melissa just like had grinded Grand Prix for a long time. I was one trying to get them out of her closet. Just like get out of
They
here.
were like from the last company like cookout.
Yeah, they were like a thing they might give out still. That might be a thing where like Melissa just had a bunch from the office before lockdown, and just brought them to the cookout. Either way, that's a fun little story from that. Regardless, the core set. This is the last one. It's going to be leaving us soon. This core set is...
I think it has Ugin and Seasoned Hollowblade, and I think 0 other cards that I remember.
dramatically different than the last core set before it. The core set before it is also one of the most broken sets of all time. It's like Veil, Aethergust, Veil, Aethergust, Field of the Dead, Risen Reef, all the Cavaliers, some other cards, Fry, which is like an all-star card. Like honestly, the core set is not as good as Eldraine, and it's not as good as War of the Spark, but it's no slouch as a little hump between them.
Yeah,
you know?
I think the only core set I would consider to be stronger might have been the Titan core set.
Yeah.
The first one with the Titans, because I think it also had like the Celestial Purge, Flash Freeze cycle that predates this new souped up, and like Aethergust and Veil of Summer especially just so miserably good. Like
they're berserk. They're just so efficient. Yeah. This course, it doesn't have a lot to really say about it. It's fine, you know. It's one of those things that's so funny, right? Because it's like when Ugin got previewed, people were like, "Wow, wow, wee! Ugin's gonna break everything," because there's this big narrative about big mana and stuff and whatnot. And you know, Ugin has been definitely a player through Standard during its time. You know, we're kind of moving into like the current year, which I guess we'll go over in a year from now. But it has never really dominated the format, and really shows just how much 8 mana is in Magic. because Ugin is really, really good. But, you know.
Yeah, this was like. I
Also, I have zero interest in that
Ugin,
stuff.
Yeah, this was like. This came out, I think maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before the Lotus Box Invitational was finalized. So I guess this came out in like June or something, and that event was in July.
Sounds right.
And I just remember being like, yeah, there's no way I'm putting Ugin in a deck. This Teferi is kind of whack. People are going to play them in their Bant decks, but like, is it very good? I think Primal Might was maybe one of the better cards.
Primal Might is, by the way, all-time great card.
Mono Green like was played for a bit here. I think I remember Mono Green aggro being a thing before it all waned. Because I remember there were a few standard challenges I played on Moto with like either Mono Green or Mono Black aggro, and the Mono Black aggro ones were maybe the Mono Black aggro ones were this time. But there was a while where I'd play like one classic every 2 months, and I would top 8 and be like, well, that was fun, and then I'd like uninstall Moto off my laptop and move forward. But yeah, it was just. Honestly, I'm glad it was a core set we don't think about or talk about anymore. I think that Teferi was like the most defining thing, and people were upset about what like 4 different versions of Teferi. This is where we started to have what's called booster fun.
I am over the booster fun, I think, for the most part. I have had too much fun. I'm over booster fun.
Mr. Bones' wild booster ride.
Yeah, I'm over booster fun, and I'm over double face cards. I've resigned that Innistrad most likely will have double face cards. There's just zero chance they don't, or whatever. Or there's gonna be some double face mechanic. Whatever, that's fine. I get it. If
or will they be modal, you think?
I don't know. Probably not. I mean, maybe some will be, but like there'll probably just be werewolves that are like the OG ones, and I'm just tired of Magic cards having a billion lines of text, which is like a complaint we'll have a year from now when we talk about the current sets leaving, where every card's 2 cards, and it just like breaks my brain that yeah. Well, I think that you shouldn't always have something to do in Magic, which is a very counter me and every other aspect of my beliefs on Magic opinion. But at some point, you should you should draw a blank piece of cardboard eventually, and you just never do these days, and it drives me crazy. Yeah. But the booster fun is just like, it's on one hand it's really good, right? Like we should say this, like all these alternate art prints that they started doing during this time and have really ramped up in the last year, have made Magic a lot cheaper. Like rares are very, very cheap unless they're broken in some format, and then they're not that expensive still. And mythics are still kind of expensive, but I mean it's very cheap to get a standard deck outside the Eldraine cards. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I think like some lands, like tri-lands and stuff, are expensive, but
yeah,
if you're building a standard deck.
Well, I went to Oasis Games during the middle of the pandemic and I legitimately bought all my tri-lands like alternate Japanese, and so I got them all for like $80 or whatever.
I've got my binder from Oasis Games as well.
Yeah, it's just too good a deal to pass up. That's why you should go to oasisgames.com right now. Let them know we support the show. Anyways, I think that's gonna do it for that year. I mentioned it a little bit earlier during Ikoria. And, not all segments of this show were equal, nor were the sets in this. But this era is really defined by bans. I mean, it's really telling that we started all this with how many bans there were. I think we were right, but we forgot so many of the cards, and they happened over such a long period of time. Cat ban, Agent ban, Winota ban. Well, Winota is banned in other formats.
All of these weren't even banned. Ikoria had Winota.
Winota is just part of Ikoria. Just straight up.
There were so many bans, and by the time we're done talking, like this core set comes out, and then we get to
Zendikar.
We get to Zendikar Rising. We're still not done with the bans. Uro's still legal. That was a ban people were upset about taking so long to happen. Like Lucky Clover doesn't get the axe until then as well with Omnath, and it's just like it was a hard year, and there's going to be so much we're gonna. What are the good things we're going to miss out on, Mason? When this set rotates, what are the cards we're going to miss? Are you going to miss playing against Yorions revealed against you on the ladder?
No, I'm not going to miss that. I'll tell you that.
Are you going to miss Edgewall Innkeeper?
No, I'm not going to miss that.
Are you going to miss Zenith Flare?
No, I'm not going to miss that.
Are you gonna miss
Trailer.
anything?
I miss Trailer Chromes. I like that card a lot.
That's good.
Yeah,
Good. I'm just trying to think like
with the positive.
I'm gonna miss Omen of the Sea.
Omen of the Sea's dope. The Omen cycle is cool. Doom Foretold is a card that kept trying in its entire time in Standard. And, I mean, like, that's the other thing to talk about, too. We didn't even mention this. But the deck that people thought would compete with the Field of the Dead Bant deck, we talked about that SCG, was the Doom Foretold deck. People came with that deck, Gottlieb had won a thing, and they're like, this deck is so dope. And then they learned about Field of the Dead.
I forgot. I don't know. Here, I think that, like, now finally we've reached the point where, like, the 25th to 30th best cards in Eldraine are seeing play.
Yeah.
And it's pretty alright. I like Midnight Clock. I played a Standard Challenge yesterday with Midnight Clock. I liked Doom Foretold. I thought that card was a really good way of using, like, kind of taxi subgame elements without it being, like, really oppressive. Kind of like a smokestacksy design, but without a lot of the issues of smokestacks. Where that card was able to see play and be a part of Magic, and that aspect of Magic was able to come back after so many years of being kind of in exile for being considered like not fun and not good. So that's another plus about Eldraine. That's all I had to say.
Yeah. There are some really cool things. Emery is really cool. Like, there's a lot of strong, a lot of dope things in the Eldraine era. And, you know, I think that Beyond Death has some cool ones. I know that you kind of disagree there. But it was a strong and powerful era. And it really, really showed that playing the best deck is really, really good.
When everything's broken, do the most broken thing. That's just always the thing to do.
Honestly, if there's a lesson you can take away from this, hopefully you had fun listening to this episode. Hopefully this was a fun time lesson if you like this sort of thing. Playing the best deck during this time was the optimal thing to do, and like every other deck in the format was also broken. No one was doing unpowerful stuff. No one was like, oh, I've got my... I mean, I guess there's some Doom Foretolds, but like Doom Foretold was like the worst of it, right? Like no one was doing the low... Like everything you did was high power, and they still just like often weren't good enough. But like, I don't know, we didn't even talk about the Winota Age of Treachery deck that got banned. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think neither of us played Magic during that time.
Yeah, I just watched, like, Emma play the ESL. Do you remember the ESL weeklies? Emma won, like, $8,000 playing those. Just, like, playing one game for $1,000. It's just, like, a crazy time period. But, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's weird. It's funny because right now I have a lot of thoughts about the current era that we're in, but we don't get to talk about that one for another year till it leaves because it's not fully actualized yet.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I think when we do the next one, we're going to have to talk about it moving forward. But everything we said now kind of pushed into this year as well. So we don't actually have to talk as much as we normally would in like context of other sets. So yeah, I don't know. It's an exciting time to play Magic if you like broken cards.
Yeah, this is not a year I would really be excited to go back and jam through again.
We didn't mention it. I alluded to it earlier. I really think COVID made this all a lot worse. I think it really put a spotlight on Standard and Arena, and I think Arena saved Magic or whatever during this time. I think it would have been really bad for competitive Magic, like worse than it turned out to be if it wasn't for Arena. And I think it put a lot of emphasis on Standard when maybe there wouldn't have been as much. And it was not a good Standard to handle that pressure. It was like really, really bad at handling that pressure. And so, just a little fun thing, you know. We alluded to it earlier. I think that did make the whole experience.
Yeah, I mean,
worse.
it just became everyone instead of there being people who would just not engage with Standard all everyone at once was like, well, I want to play Standard or draft Ikoria or do something, and that something was just play some of the most
unplayable Standard,
broken and not fun Standard that there was to play, which is kind of a big problem with Magic. I remember at the time that was a lot of what people were talking about is like how much of this is like, is it actually that they designed something so broken, or is it that like everyone's just putting it under a microscope because everyone's playing it once? It's like, well, it's kind of both, but also the fact that everyone's mad about it is because everyone's playing it, putting it under a microscope, and hating it.
Yeah,
so.
it's true. Well, thank you all so much for listening to this week's episode of Constructive Criticism. You can find me on Twitter at Mason E. Clark, and every week on Card Kingdom, writing articles over there. You can find Abe everywhere at More No Things, MORENO Things. Thank you. We'll see y'all next week for another episode of Constructed Criticism.